All right, and let me share my screen. So what we did is last time, what we said is we can create a pairing connect. Sorry, we can create a VPC. So last time we were into this particular region, United States, or we can create in any region. Let it be anything. Okay. So we are in United States. Let's create VPC. So creating the VPC, let me give up the VPC name. Let's say VPC A. Okay. Let's give it name as VPC B. Okay. CIDR block. Last time we chosen the CIDR block, or you can take it anything. Let's say 10.0.0/24. Okay. And then last time I was able to calculate this one, right? Everybody knows how to calculate how many subnets will be created. All good. If I want to ask here in this particular CIDR block, how many subnets will be created? Can anybody guide me? Last time, how many people were there into the doubt session from this class? No one?
No, sir.
Nobody was there in this class. Are you people not attending the doubt session which is happening on Wednesday? No? Or you are not being informed for the doubt session in prior basis?
No.
So there's no group communication happening for the doubt session. Am I right?
Yes.
I don't think so. I
They
s-
informed me like 2 minutes before join the meeting, something like that.
Okay, okay.
Mm. So I'm outside, so I don't know prior information.
But what about the other people? Has anybody joined last week doubt session?
No.
Okay. Okay, I'll ask our team to inform you on the prior basis. So I have shared one recording which happened for the doubt session, and then there I explained everything about how do we calculate a particular subnets, okay, in the CADR block. So I'll explain it again. Okay, it's very easy. So let's say this is particular CIDR block, means from this particular CIDR block or from this particular subnet, okay, if I'm creating a VPC of this particular block, so how many subnets can be created? Now, how many subnets can be created of? Let's say I want to create the subnets of, so I cannot go in depth right now. You can refer the doubt session where I've explained everything, okay? If I want to create a subnet of /26, from this particular block, how many /26 subnets can be created? Okay. Can anybody tell me that one thing only? Can I take a lower number? Let's say if I want to create a subnet of 22 from this particular CIDR, can I do that? Yes, no, maybe. So have you gone through last week recording? No? So I will recommend guys, please take this class seriously, okay? Otherwise, there will be a one-way communication. There won't be a two-way communication. So just refer the recordings. So if you are not uh, available in the class or if you have not understood anything, just let me know. So we can always take a higher number because when we cut this particular subnet or particular CIDR block, and when we want to cut this one, so you can take higher number, anything 25, 26, 28. Okay, so I want to cut the subnets from this particular block. So I want to know that how many subnets will be created of this particular CIDR block slash 26. Okay. Now for calculation of this one, what we need to do is we need to basically minus it from 32. We need to basically minus it from just a moment. For calculation of the CIDR block, we need to minus it from 26 because 26 we want to cut off 26 and from 24. So 26 minus 24 is 2. Okay. And then raise the number which comes here. So 2 to the power 2 is equal to 4. Okay. So in total, 4 subnets can be created from this particular block if I want to create the subnet of slash 26. Okay. Now, IP per subnet. In every subnet, what will be the IP addresses? So for calculation of this one, just minus it 32 minus 26 equals to, because we want to cut the subnet of 26, so I will minus 26 here, okay? And then it will come as a 4 and 2, 6, okay? And then raises 2 to the power, the number which comes here, which is nothing but the 64, okay? So 4 subnets will be created of slash 26 and IPs will be 64 in every subnet, okay? Total IP address. Total IP address in this VPC, okay, in VPC CIDR. So whatever the CIDR we have taken, how many IP addresses can be created from this one? So 32 minus 24, because this CIDR block is for 24, okay? And calculation will be 32 minus 24 is equal to 6, 8, okay? And raise that number 2 to the power, okay? And that becomes 256, all right? 2 to the power 8 is 256. So that means 4 subnet of 64 IPs. 4 subnets of 64 IP addresses, which is equal to 256. Anybody has any problem to understand this calculation?
No.
Although I have explained this one in the doubt session, you can refer the recording where I have explained everything very deeply, but still if you can just refer now. So any doubts here to understand this one? So let's say if I am creating the VPC of this particular block, okay, so I can take this particular CIDR here, okay, and let's everything be like this, and then create the VPC. So VPC is created, okay. Now let's say I want to now just creating the VPC doesn't allow my server to be connected, so I have to get the subnet as well. So I want to get the subnet of my VPC, which is nothing but the VPC B. And let's say I want to create one subnet, let's say subnet 01. Okay. Let's take any availability zone, that's fine. So I can take US East 1A. And then my VPC block is this one. What will be my subnet block? So we already calculated here that I can create a 4 subnets. So what will be my first subnet? First subnet. So basically I want to cut this one into 26. So my first subnet will be 10.0.0.0 slash 26. Okay. And what will be the IP range of this particular subnet? Either you can have this like this, because there we have 64 IP address. Okay. So the range will be 10.0.0.02 10.0.0.63. If you have any doubts here, what you can do is you can refer this particular website, which is IP address guide. Okay, you can go here and refer this particular website. This will also will give you a calculation. I'm just taking some moments here. So you can put your CADR here, that how many IP addresses or what you will get. So you can paste this one here. So same thing, first IP is this, last IP is 63. Okay, and subnet representation will be this. Okay, let's say I want to get the second subnet as well for now. I don't want to get all the 4 subnets, but let's say I want to create 2 subnets for now. So what will be my second subnet? So second subnet will be 10.0.0.0, sorry, 0.64/26, because our last IP in this particular subnet was 10.0.0/63. Okay, so next IP will become 64. I already told you in the last classes that last bit moves first. Okay, so this will be my second subnet. For now, I want to create a first subnet, so I can take this particular CIDR. Okay, I'll go here and create this subnet. Okay, create the subnet. So this is my first subnet. Let's say I want to create second subnet as well, then I can use this particular VPC. I can define, let's say, my subnet or subnet 02, something like that. Okay. Availability zone, let's say I want to have now second availability zone, second data center. Now what will be my second subnet CIDR? So this will be my second subnet CIDR. Okay. If tomorrow I want to create furthermore, then I can create maximum 4 subnets from this particular range. Okay. All right. So I can create 4 subnets, but for now I'm creating 2. Okay. That's fine. So 2 subnets are created. Again, creating the subnets, we also need the route table. So what I can do this, I can create a route table. Let's say I can create the route table VPC B route table. I can mention the name like this. Okay, I have covered all this thing in the last class, but still I'm just recalling this one. Okay, now this route table is created. Okay, now in this route table, uh, just a moment. Let's not call like this. Let's call this particular route table like this. I'm just deleting this route table for now. Let's not call this route table like this. Let's call this route table like uh, private route table. Okay, and then I'm taking this particular VPC, create the route table. Also, I need internet gateway, so create an internet gateway. My IGW. Okay. Now, after that, what you have to do is go to the route table again. We need to define the route. So in this private route table, let's say I want to just take up the first subnet. So I can associate my first subnet in this particular route table. Okay. And then let's give it like public route table. I don't want to go for public route table. Okay. Public route table. I associated my subnet. Okay. And this is my particular subnet. Subnet 0, subnet 01 is associated. Okay. Now, what are the routes for this particular subnet? So I want to define the routes. So let's say I want to go for, this is my public subnet. So I can define that after this traffic, everything should goes to the internet gateway. Internet gateway ID. Internet gateway is not created yet. Let me see again. Internet gateway. Is it okay? It is in the detached state. I will have to attach it first. So I have to go to action, attach to the VPC. Which VPC? My VPC B. Attach internet gateway. Now only I can define into the route table. So I can go to this particular route table, edit routes inside that, add route. So I want to say that after this particular traffic, accept This traffic should go to everything to the internet gateway. And this is my internet gateway ID shape changes. Now, if I create a server, if I create the server, sorry, not VPC, if I go to the EC2, if I create a server, I would be able to connect the, I would be able to create the server now. So these are my last, and let me terminate this particular servers. I don't want right now this one, which was already there. So I want to launch a new instance. Go to the launch instance, go to the, let's say I want to call it as public server, something like that, because I created the public subnet, right? Public server. And then I can take any keys which I already have. And then I want to create it into my, uh, I want to create it into my own VPC, not a default VPC. What happened? My own VPC, which is VPC B, and this is my subnet 01. Auto assign public IP. So public IP is not been auto assigned, so I can take it from here. I want to have a public IP. Let's everything remain like this, whatever it is, and then launch the instance. Now I want to check whether I'm able to connect to my instance in this VPC or not. So I can go to the instance. Till now, everything I have already explained in the last classes. It's not a new one, but still I'm just recapping it because I need another VPC in further chapters. So I can take this server, take the public IP over to this server, and then I can go to the PuTTY session, put this IP address, go to the SSH, authentication, credentials, and the keys which we already have decided. So this is the one which I've decided to go with. Open the connection. So you see here, I'm able to log into my server, EC2 user. Okay. Any doubts till now? Creating a VPC, creating a public subnet, uh, defining the route table, and then connecting to the server. Any doubts here? All good? Not getting anything? I'm just renaming it like public subnet. Okay. And this one I'm calling it as a private subnet because I will create a net gateway now. So last time I told you as well that the traffic which you want to write for, which you want to have the traffic which will only be private to your instance. So I can get a net gateway. Okay. So this one subnet, which do we create? Select a subnet in which to create the, okay. So I already told the net gateway will always be created into the public subnet. So basically I will take this one and then allocate elastic IP. If I already have anything, okay, I already have available this one. So I can take this elastic IP and then create a net gateway. So net gateway is created. Now I can go to the route table. I can create another route table for this particular. So I can create a route table, private route table, and then select the VPC. I have a VPC B, create route table, and then I want to associate first of all the subnets in this route table. So I want to associate this particular subnet, private subnet, because I want to make to this one a private subnet. And what will be the routes? Go to the routes, define accept this one. Everything should go to the net gateway. And this is my net gateway ID, shape changes. All right. So this one I have already done in the last classes. And then when I want to connect from one server to another server, then I need to have a private connection between these of two servers. Okay. So today was not the discussion about this one. Okay. Today the discussion starts from what we have the further one, why the people are leaving. Okay, no issues. All right. Now our discussion starts from here. Okay. Public, private, and elastic IP. So today's discussion will be starting from here. Now we have three types of IPs in AWS cloud. The first one type is elastic, public, and private. Okay. So last time I told you what is the private IP, what is the public IP. Just can anybody recap it or give me input on this? Anybody, anyone? What is public IP and what is the private IP? What happened? I'm asking some questions, nobody is responding. Am I audible to everyone or not? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Then why you are not responding? Anyone? So what is the public and what is the private IP?
Public IP is accessible to everyone, whereas private IP is IP which is not
Mm-hmm.
it's constrained to only particular user.
All right. So not a particular user. Public IP is the one which basically takes our traffic outside to the internet or which is publicly exposed. Means if you want to have IP address which will be like in this case where we have one server, how do we connect it? We take in the public IP of the server to connect to the instance, right? So our traffic is going outside to the internet and then connected to the instance inside the AWS. Private IP is the one which will help you to allow the connection within the AWS only, within the AWS, within the VPC. Okay, so if you want to connect within the VPC, then you will use private IP. And if you want to have a connection outside the internet, then you will use the public IP. Okay. Now, first of all, we'll go through the private IP. Assigned to an instance within the VPC. Any instance will get the private IP. Okay. Used for internal communication between AWS resources. So when we create an instance, basically two types of IPs are assigned. One is the public IP, another one is the private IP. So public IP is an optional one, whether you want to take public IP over your server or not, that is your choice. Okay. But private IP will always be assigned to your server. Okay. Used for internal communication between AWS resources. Let's say in AWS account, you have three servers. Okay. So all those three servers can communicate to each other using private IP. Okay. Not accessible from the internet. Private IP is not accessible from the internet. What I want to say is, let's say this is my server. If I want to connect to this server, I want to take a SSH session. I want to connect. So if I use a private IP, I will not be able to connect to this instance. Okay. I have to use the public IP. Okay. If you want to test it, you can use it. This is the this is the private IP, and then define your credentials, and then take this particular keys here, and then open the connection. So you see here connection is not getting established. That means private IP only help you within the AWS, within the AWS resources. But our connection is going to the internet and then going to the AWS account. So we need to have a public IP in that case. Okay. So that's what I've written here. Used for internal communication between the resources. Now, remains associated with the within the instance until it is stopped. So when you create an instance, basically private IP will be available until you terminate the instance. Okay. So once private IP is assigned, it will be as it is, means it won't change. It will be only this particular IP for this instance. If I get another instance, it will get another IP. But what I want to say is the private IP will be the static, means it won't change. If you stop this server, let's say if I'm stopping this server, okay, or reboot this server. So if you want to stop this server, you see here the server is going in the stopping state. Okay. Let's be just in the stop state. Meanwhile, we can go to the another points. So private IP remains associated with the server until it is stopped. Okay. And persistent upon restart. When the instance is terminated, the private IP is released and can be assigned to the another instance in the same subnet. So right now, this particular server is in the stop state. Okay. But if you see here, this private IP is still the same. Okay. It is still available. So if I start my server again, so this will be the only IP, okay? It's not going to be changed. But when I terminate this server, so what will happen is that obviously termination means I want to delete this server. When this server is deleted, all the resources associated with this server going to be deleted, okay? So private IP will also be released from here. And if you create another server tomorrow, maybe this particular IP will be assigned to the another server, okay? So these are all the points I have written here. It's a automatic and static user control. Means what I want to say that this private IP is within the user control. User means if I'm creating the server, then I have the control over to that particular IP address, what needs to be assigned and what not. Okay. First one is automatic, means either you have an automatic way to get this. See, this is my private IP. Okay. So now let's say tomorrow I just want 10.0.0 slash 10.0.0 dot 6. I don't want 44. I just want dot 6. Okay, so can I do that? Yes, I can do that. I can assign it from my side. So that's what I'm saying. It's in the user control. Okay, but if you don't want to define from your side which particular IP address, private IP address you need on your instance, then it will get automatically assigned. You would have heard the name of DHCP server, right? The similar way it works, kind of a DHCP. But if you don't want to get it assigned from the AWS itself, then you can assign from your side. We will see that, okay? It's into the user control. Communication between EC2 instances within the same VPC, okay? So now, what I wanted to say that, let's come to the another point. So this one is fine, okay? When I restart the server or reboot the server, this private IP is not going to be changed, okay? It will be remain as it is, whatever it was, okay? Now, let's say suppose, uh, if I want to have the server where I want to assign the private IP from my choice, then what I can assign, okay? So I can go to the launch instance, okay? And then I can define, let's say server B or anything, whatever we want to keep it, server B, and then AMI is fine. Key pair is, again, I want to take this one. Go to the network settings in the edit mode, okay? I want to create the server in my custom VPC, not in my default VPC. Just give me a moment. Why it's not coming? Let's take this VPC B, which I created as a custom VPC, okay? And then I want to go for public subnet, that's fine. I want to have a public IP, Okay, so you see here, public IP is a choice here. Either you want to have public IP on your instance or not, that depends upon you. So I want to have public IP on my instance, so I will take this one. Okay, now I want to say that if I want to define my own private IP, okay, so how would I do that? I'll go to the advanced network configuration. Okay, I can write here my own private IP. Otherwise, what will happen is that, okay, it will take AWS will automatically assign one private IP within the pool. Now, what will be that range, which I already discussed here? If you see here, we created this subnets. Okay, the first subnet we created the public subnet, and that's where we are creating our instance. So any IP from this one to this one will be given to this server. But let's say suppose I'm choosing randomly, I want to have uh, 10.0.0.10. Okay, I want to have this particular IP only on my server. So can I have this one? Yes. So what you can do this,
Yes.
you can define here. Sorry, anybody has in doubt? Okay, so I can define here this particular IP address, okay, but make sure this IP address is within your subnet, okay. So you see here, we have chosen this particular subnet. If you come here, we chosen this particular subnet. That's where we got this range, okay, 10.0.0 to 10.0.0.63. If we are choosing this one, 0.0 dot, let's say 90, will it come? Will it take this IP address or not? Can anybody confirm me? Yes or no?
No, no, sir.
Okay, no, because it's not coming in this range. So we created a subnet of this particular CIDR, means of this particular range. All right. So make sure you are taking the IP address within your subnet only. So it will not come here. Now I have taken this particular IP address. What I said here that I don't want AWS to assign the private IP address by their own choice. I want my choice, my private IP address to be assigned here. Okay. Now you can do launch the instance. Okay. So when you do that, it will create a server and that particular IP address will be assigned to your AWS instance. So let's wait for a few seconds. This particular instance is created. And now if you see here, my second server would have my own choice IP address. That's what I'm saying, that it's into the user control. So AWS private IP is into the user control. What you want to assign, you can control over to that. Now see here, if I go to the details, I got the same IP address. But if I don't define from my own site, it can assign anything from this range, from 0.0 to 0.63. Okay. Now, if this is fine, then we can move ahead. Let's go ahead. In AWS subnet, AWS is a 5 IP address. Okay. Now, there's another thing that in every subnet, let's say I created this subnet. Okay. So AWS won't allow you to take all the IP address on your instance. Okay. So what happens is that, just give me a moment. What happens is that in every subnet, let's say this is your subnet. Okay. 10.0.0.0 slash 26. This is your first subnet to which we are calling as a public subnet. That's what we created, right? Just now. Now, what we are getting here, the IP range will be 10.0.0 to 10.0.0.63. Okay, because we get a 64 IP address in this subnet. So how many total IP address? 64. Okay. Now AWS says that I will reserve 5 IP address from every subnet. From every subnet. From any subnet or every subnet. Okay. So this is my subnet. So here 5 IP addresses will be blocked. What are those IP address? So it says that the first IP address 10.0.0.0 will be blocked for network ID. Means, what does that network ID means? Can anybody know? What does it mean? Just can anybody know what does this means? Why it blocks this IP for network ID, or what is the network ID? Okay, I can tell you. So network ID is nothing but to represent your subnet. How you're representing your subnet? You're representing from this particular IP address, right? That's what AWS says, that to represent the subnet, I need this particular IP address. So I won't allow you to take this IP address on your server. Okay. Second IP address, AWS says that from every subnet, I will be using your first IP address, which is 0, and also second IP address for what? For gateway or routing purpose. If my subnets wants to route my traffic to another instance, then this particular IP is used as a gateway IP address. So that is also blocked in the subnet. 10.0.0.2, this is for future purpose. Okay. 10.0.0.3, fourth IP address, this is also for future purpose. Means AWS says that in future I may use this, so I'm blocking this particular IP addresses. Okay. Now the last one, AWS says that from your subnet, the last IP address, last means this particular IP address in this subnet, is blocked for broadcast purpose. Okay. Broadcast ID. What is a broadcast? Can anybody know? Anybody knows about it? What is a broadcast ID? Broadcast ID?
No idea.
No idea. So broadcast means, suppose you want to send a message to all your devices. Let's say you want to shut down all the servers, right? Okay, and before that you want to send the message to all the devices. So for sending the message or for any communication, IP is used. Okay, so AWS says that I want to block this particular IP for the communication within your devices or within your subnet. Okay, so this particular IP address for this particular subnet, tomorrow you may have another subnet, so you have to see. Okay, now if I say that AWS block this particular IP address, so let's verify this one whether I'm able to create the server using this particular IP addresses or not. So what I can do is, let me remove all other servers and create another server. And let's select everyone here, go to the action, go to the instance state, terminate these servers. Okay, launch a new server, go to the launch instance, and then let's say I want to define, take it any name, whatever you want to take it, that's fine. Now take a key pair from here, add it to the network settings, and take the VPC, which is our custom VPC. So just a moment, it takes some times to pop up here. Okay, so my custom VPC, which is nothing but VPC B, I have this particular subnet, which is public subnet. So I want to have public IP assigned to my instance, but what I want is, I want to go to the advanced network configuration. I says that, hey, just assign this particular IP address, 10.0.0.0, 10.0.0.0. Okay, I want to have this particular IP address on my instance. So see whether it's take this or not. Because this is the first IP address in our subnet, and this is used for network ID, means to represent the subnet itself. So that's why AWS says that I won't assign this particular IP address to the instance. But still, let's try it whether it's takes it or not. So you will get error. Okay, you see here. See, launch instance failed. What it says that AWS 10.0. This particular address is reserved in this subnet. Okay, let's try the first IP, which is used for gateway. So AWS reserved this particular IP address in this subnet to route the traffic between another devices. Okay, let's say suppose you have two instances in this particular subnet, you have two servers. So these two servers can automatically communicate, but how the communication happen, how the data has been transferred using this particular IP address, which is called as a gateway ID. Okay, so let's take Now, what I want to say that this is the error. Let's cancel this one and say that, okay, hey, create the new security group. That's fine for now. So you see here, this is the first IP. If I want to launch the instance, it won't launch. Okay. It says that, hey, this IP address is also reserved. So this is also reserved. Okay. Let's try with 10.0.2. So let's try with 10. Again, okay, existing security group. Just I'll explain you this error, but meanwhile, every time you can create a new security group. That's fine for me to resolve this error. So third IP address. Third IP address is used for future purpose. Let's see whether it takes this or not. So you see here, this is also not been taken. It's giving the error. Let's try the fourth one. So fourth one is 0.3. Let's try this one. Again, cancel this one, create a new security group. That's fine for me. Launch the instance. Let's see whether it is taking this particular IP address or not. So again failed. Okay. Now what else? The last IP address. AWS says that the last IP address in this subnet, which is 10.0.0.63, is also reserved. So let's see whether it takes this one or not. So last time I had taken 10.0.0.10, which was taken because it was not reserved. Okay. So I can take now, let's say 63. I want to say that, hey, assign this particular IP address to this server. So let's see whether it takes or not. So you see, again, it's failing. Okay. So you can take any IP address in this range except these particular IP addresses. Anybody has any doubt?
No, sir.
All good? All right. Now let's move ahead. So last time I taken 10.0.0.10. That's why it was taken, because it is not the first IP address, not the second one, not the third one, fourth one, or last. Okay. So similarly, for this particular subnet, what will be the first IP address? This particular IP address, which is for network representation, means subnet representation itself. For gateway IP address, second IP address for third and fourth feature purpose, and the last one for broadcast address. Okay. Although AWS doesn't allow broadcasting, means you can't send message to all the servers, but in the traditional network, means if you see a networking how it is done, then we usually basically reserve the last IP address in every subnet for the broadcast purpose. Okay. So I defined here everything which I have talked about. Okay. Now, the lab one create a server, you will get one private IP from the subnet pool. Create a server and assign the IP from your side. So we have already done this, these two labs, okay? I've already just showed you first IP address, second IP address, and the last IP address. So it was not assigned. Assigned a two private IP address to the instance. So how you can assign a two IP address? Let's say I want to have an instance where I want to have two IP address on those instance. How do I do that? So for that purpose, what you can do is you can go to the ENI. So let me, whether I'm able to see network interfaces here, keep area network interfaces. So you have to go here. You have to create one network interface. Okay. Create a network interface. Okay. And define here, you can define a description that second interface for public server. Any description you can give. Which subnet? So I will be creating my server into the public subnet. So very first thing is that you need to have a VPC defined. Just give me a moment. Where is that subnet EA? What is subnet ID of our particular VPC? Just give me a moment. Let's go to the network interface, and then this is the particular VPC ID for our this particular subnet. Create a network interface. Why it's not allowing me to choose the, let's see what is the A. Okay. Network interface, second network interface for my public subnet. Okay. Now, so what it says that, actually see, I just want to show it from a diagram. Okay. So what actually happens is, in the real time scenario, what actually happens is, let me remove everything it was in the last classes. So every server, if you go to the EC2, okay, if you go to the EC2, what actually happens is that interface. What actually happens is that every server has a network interface, right? So every server has this particular interface assigned. So over to this particular interface, your IP address is assigned, okay? Whether public or private, public/private IP address, okay? Now, what you're saying that you want to have a second IP address on your server, then how it would be assigned? So it would be assigned when you have a second interface within your server, right? So this is your first interface. Now, if you want to have second IP address, you need secondary interface, and then you can assign a second private IP address. That's how you will assign, okay? Now, that's what I'm doing. Very first thing is that I'm creating the second interface from here, okay? And then what I what I say that, okay, from your side you can assign any IP address to this particular server. That's fine for me, okay? But if you want to assign any custom, you can define here what you want. But for now, what I say that, okay, just assign anything whatever you want to assign, okay? Now create network interface. Once you do that, what happens? Okay, it says that just assign any security group. So I can assign anything, let it be anything. So you see here, one interface has been created, okay? And this is the interface which I created here, and what IP it got. Let's see if you're able to see the IP address. So you got 10.0.0.33 or 38, okay? Now what you can do this, you can attach this particular interface to your server. So where's my server? Do we have any available running server or not? Let's see first. So is there anything running? Just give me a moment. Just remove this particular part from here. Okay. So all the servers are terminated. Let me create a server. Okay, let's say I want to say that public server or anything. Again, you can call anything. That's fine for me. Key pairs are, you can take it anything. Today network is slow. I don't know why it's taking that much time. Okay, so now I want to edit the settings. What I want to say that, okay, I want to create my server in VPC-B, this particular subnet, okay, and then launch the instance. Okay, now if you go to this instance, just take it the instance ID from here, go to the network interface again, okay, choose this network interface which we created. I can name it also secondary interface. Okay, Why it's not coming? Secondary interface. Okay, so I have mentioned here the name here. Network is slow today, man. Okay, let it be like that. No issues. Let me stop my video. I think network is slow. It's taking bandwidth. So I can go and go to the public server, actions, networking, attach network interface, select VPC in VPC-B, network interface. So this is what we created, okay? I want to define it and then just attach it. So now, if you see the diagram, I have created network interface. I have assigned one IP which was automatically assigned. Now, what I did that I attach this interface from to my to my server. Okay. So now, if you see here, it's still very slow. Okay. If you see here, if you see the details of, I would have now two private IP address. This is the first one. This is the second one. Okay, so I can use any private IP address to communicate within my VPC. Anybody has any doubt to understand this one?
No, sir.
All good. Okay. So now this was the third lab. Okay. The fourth one, private IP DNS resolution, that we will see. Okay, not to worry. It will come later. Now it comes to the public IP address. So very first thing is that how do you check the public IP address? Do you have any Linux command to check public IP address? Anybody knows? Anybody has worked on Linux? Any commands that you know in Linux? No?
Sir, basic like
I
sudo
know like ifconfig
mkdir,
hyphen ifconfig
Sorry? If config. Okay.
ifconfig hyphen
mkdir sudo.
Okay. So somebody says that if config command. So if config is basically used for um, like it won't show you the public IP address of the server. It will only show the private IP addresses. Okay. So if you see here, if I want to have connect to this instance, I can go to the connect. No public assigned you with no. Okay, sorry, I was not taking the public IP address. Let's see if I'm able to connect or not. So now I will not be able to connect. Okay. So just a moment. Just just a moment. So by mistakenly, I did not take the public IP address to this server. That's why I'm not able to connect. Okay. So, but if you want to have, okay, let me create the another server. Then I can talk about this one. Let me create the another instance where I will take the public IP address. Okay. Just give me a moment. So I can take server A, let it come automatically. I want to go for Amazon Linux. That's fine. Server A. And then t2.micro, key pairs, okay, and then create it to the any VPC. That's fine for me. I don't worry about, because I just want to show you another thing. So, but it's still okay. I'm creating VPC-B, public subnet is fine. I want to have a public IP on my server. Okay. One more thing, guys, if you want always to this option to be enabled by default, so what you can do is you can, because this is your public subnet where you have defined the route table and you have defined the internet gateway. So better is you can go to this particular subnet, okay, and say that always assign the public IP in this subnet. So how you can say? You can go to the subnet. You can go to the subnet 01, this one public subnet, okay, which I defined here, okay. Go to the actions and edit subnet settings and enable auto assign public IPv4 address. Okay, so always public IP address, if any instance created in this subnet, always a public IP address will be assigned. So I can prove you this one. So let's say cancel this one, okay? Now, if I'm launching the instance now, okay, and if you say here server A or anything, okay, server, really taking lots of time, okay, server, and then if you go to the this fine, if you go to the network settings now again, if you define a VPC and you define a subnet where you want to create, so I want to create the public subnet. Now you see the manually I don't have to enable it, it's automatically giving me the, it automatically says that hey, I will give you the public IP address, because on the subnet level I have modified the setting and said that always allow the public IP address in this subnet, okay? But even if your choice is not to take the public IP address, then you can disable it now. Now this is your choice if you want to disable it or not, okay? Now everything is fine now. Now launch the instance. I will get a public IP address so that I will be able to connect to this server. So again, there are lots of ways to connect to this server, but now I'm going to the instance, and then either I can take a putty session or I can directly connect from here. So I will choose that particular server, let it come. So I will click on this server and I say that, hey, connect. So it will connect within the browser itself. That is also fine for me. I can connect to this server. So when you connect, a session will be opened in your browser itself. It is similar to the putty session which we have already discussed in the last classes. So now, if somebody was saying that if config command, right? If config. So if you see here in the if config command, we are only able to see the private IP address, which you can see here as well. Okay, but you are not able to see public IP address. So public IP address is not shown by any Linux command. Okay, always remember this point in the mind. If config or any Linux command, there's another command as well. You can use IPA command or IPADDR. Somebody call it like this. IP address is also a command, or somebody use IPADDR. So by this command as well, you are only able to see the private IP address, not the public IP address. Okay, that's the another thing. Now, how do you see the public IP address from the command line? Okay, we can see from here as well. Okay, we can see from here as well, but if you ask me, is there any command? So there's no Linux command, but yeah, there is the AWS CLI commands. Okay, last time I showed you how to configure the AWS CLI and run the AWS commands. So basically, AWS says that, okay, if you want to see the public IP address or any information which is associated with the instance, there's a service called as metadata service that we will talk into the EC2 chapter, okay? But for now, what you can understand is there's a metadata service which basically has all the information associated with that instance, okay? What is the instance ID? What is the private IP address? What is the public IP address? So like this, every information associated with the particular instance, the metadata service helps you to get that information. And how you will get that information? You will use this command. So if I want to have public IP address, then I can use this particular command over to my server to get the public IP address. But there's one problem. If I use this command, nothing is coming out. You see here, nothing is coming out. So earlier, before 2021, okay, keep in this mind, before 2021, actually, this command is basically hitting one IP address, which is nothing but the metadata service IP address. And hackers also can do this. Okay, hackers also can, because this is the public IP address, right? This is the public or private?
Public IP.
Public IP address, okay? So public means accessible over to the internet. Okay. So that means if I am able to access my metadata, means metadata means my server information, so somebody else also can access my server information, and tomorrow they can hack my server, or hack my application, then there's a very big problem, right? So what AWS says that for making this more secure, I have disallowed direct command to this IP address, which is nothing but the metadata service used for metadata service. Now AWS says that onwards 2021, okay, because there was an incident in 2021 happened to because of this metadata, so they have blocked direct access to this particular IP address. What they have done is they have allowed a secured way, which is nothing but MDS v2 version, okay. So metadata service before 2021 we was calling it as a MDS v1, metadata service version 1. Now after 2021, the metadata server version 2 came, okay, metadata service version 2. So in the version 2, what you have to do is you have to know whether your MDS 1 is allowed or MDS 2 is allowed. Obviously MDS 1 is not allowed because you are not able to hit this IP address directly from the curl command or anything, okay. So what AWS says that if you want to check whether you have a MDS1 or MDS2, you can fire this command, okay. So I can copy this particular command, paste it here, and run this command. If you see here, sorry, okay, no credentials. Anybody can guide me what's the problem? Why I'm not able to run the AWS command here? We covered this last sessions when we configure AWS CLI. What is missing here? Why I'm not able to run the command? Anyone? Any inputs on this? No inputs? Are you guys not seeing the recordings or taking session physically? No? Okay, I can guide you for now. So what exactly the problem is? I'm just querying something into my EC2 service, okay? So my server doesn't have the credentials, it doesn't have the authority to basically talk to any other service in AWS, okay, because I'm querying from the EC2 service. Tomorrow I can query from the S3 service, tomorrow I can query from the RDS service, okay. So what it exactly saying that you don't have the credentials. So how to set up the credentials? What you can do is you can go to the IAM, okay, and create a role basically for this one. So now I want to create a role. Role is nothing but a temporary way of assigning the credentials to any service. So I already have an instance role, but let me create this one. Okay, create a role. Okay, and for which AWS server you want to create the role? I want to create the role for EC2. Okay, and then next, because I want to attach this role to the EC2. Okay, and what I want to allow? I want to allow everything. Administrator access means everything on my server. Go to next. Role name you can give anything. Instance role 2. I'm just taking this name for my reference, that's fine, and create the role. So once role is created in IAM, you can go to your instance where you're running the command. So this is my instance where I'm running the command. Go to the actions, go to the security, okay, modify IAM role, okay, and then choose the role which you created. So I created this role, instance role 2, where I defined all the permissions, administrator access, right? So now my server has all the access to AWS services. So now I can go to my server again and say that, hey, can you just run the command now? So if you see here, now my AWS server is able to run the command. Okay. So what exactly it says? So if you see here, this particular thing, HTTP token. So it says that you don't have MDS1 allowed because HTTP token is required. If you want to do HTTP connection, you need HTTP tokens. Okay. So that's where we got to know that this particular IP address, we basically need to have a tokens. Then only we will be able to use this particular IP address to get any query or anything. So now the question comes here, which command we will use with the token. So now command with the token is this one, okay? So this one. So now MDS v2 means where the tokens are allowed. So our MDS v2 is by default required. It says the required. You don't have a choice. You need to give me a token. So now I can use this command, okay? Generate a token. First of all, we'll generate the token. Nobody will ask you this particular commands. So don't worry about to remember these commands. Just you would have an idea what is MDS v1, what is MDS v2. That's where I just want to give you the information. So now if you see here, now when I run this command now, so you see here it gives me the public IP address. Okay, it's give me the public IP address. So using the token, when I run this curl command using the token to this particular IP address, which is metadata service IP address, now it's give me the public IP address. If you match it, this is the same one, right? So that's how we can get the public IP address from the command line. Okay. Now another question comes, sir, can we disable the MDS v2 so that we don't have to allow the token? We can directly run the curl command to see all the resources. Yes, we can do that. For doing that purpose, you can go here and have mentioned uh, if I have mentioned here how you can do that. So for doing that, you can use this particular command where I mentioned that the tokens are optional. Okay. So when I hit this particular command here, so if you see here, what is the problem? What argument is missing? Option instance. Okay, instance ID. Okay. So instance ID is basically okay, you have to fire this all these commands. So first of all, again generate the token. Okay. And then save the instance ID of your server. Let me see what is the instance ID. Dollar instance dollar any mistake spelling mistake instance. Okay, instance underscore ID. It's instance underscore ID. Okay, yeah. So this is my instance ID. Okay, now this instance ID has been saved to this particular variable. Okay, now I can disallow MDS v2. So I can run this command. See, if you don't have Linux commands knowledge, that's fine for me. You can see these commands for now, not an issue. So now if you see here, this HTTP tokens are now optional. It's not required, but earlier it was required. If you see here, earlier it says that HTTP tokens are required, but now it's optional. So when it is optional, you don't have to again and again generate the token. You can directly use curl command to query anything. So if you query this metadata service, okay, you will be able to see lots of things which you can query. So let's say which AMI ID is used, you can use that. Okay. Let's say what's the public, what's the private IP address, that also you can look up. What keys you have used, what's the name of those keys, you can look up. What's the instance type? So let's say if I want to see the instance type now. So now everything will be done without the token. So I just can mention here whatever I want to see. I want to see now instance type. So you see here it says that your instance type is t2.micro. Okay. Let's say what is the security group assigned to this particular server? So you can mention here security groups. So it says that security group name is launch wizard 6. Let's verify. So if you go to the security of this server, you see here launch wizard 6, right? Anybody has any doubt to understand this one? Forget about the commands. Nobody will ask you. Okay. But tomorrow, if you are running such commands and comes to me that, hey, these commands are not working, then you should have understanding that whether you have MDS v1 or MDS v2 version. Okay. So I have made the document for you for your easiness purpose. Either you can go to Google and you will also find this one, but you should have at least the troubleshooting steps, that why these commands earlier were not working and now it's working, because we disabled the MDS v2 version. What is MDS v2? Just a secure version to call the metadata. Any doubts here? Anything that's you are not understanding? All good? Yes, no, maybe. You can respond back in the chat as well if you don't want to open your mouths. All fine for me.
Understood, sir.
Understood. All right. So guys, I see only few people's responding, others are not responding. If you have any problems or anything, you can let me know. Okay, that's fine for me. I can repeat all the things, but at the end of the day, you should understand. Okay. So the key difference between MDS v1 and MDS v2 I mentioned here, just for authentication. MDS v1 no authentication tokens. Okay. MDS v2 requires the session token. Now you will say that, sir, the session token can also be generated by the hacker, because they can also run this particular token command, generate the token, and use our a metadata service. But the problem is, when hacker will generate the token, it will be a remote token, means it will not be over to that server, so that will not work. Okay, so you see here what I mentioned here. Uh, it basically generates the token which is should be created from that server only, and who will be sitting on that server. Okay, so remote token will not work, because hacker will try to use the things from his windows. Okay, because it doesn't have all the connections accessibility to your server, but it will just do a hit and trick it. Okay, now so remote token doesn't work, only local token works. That's why MDS v2 is more secure. So I mentioned everything here. You can read this one when you get the time. That's fine for me. Public IP address. Now we are coming back to the public IP address. We got to know that how to see the public IP address from the instance level or from the command line level, which is nothing but the AWS CLI level. Okay. Now let's come back to the public IP address. What is it and why we use this one? Okay. So public IP address assigned dynamically by AWS means when you launch the instance, it is automatically assigned by AWS. So you don't have control over to it. What will be assigned? In private IP address, what is assigned, we can control. We can decide our custom IP address. Okay. But here, you don't have control over to that. You just have a control whether you want public IP address on your server or not. That control you have, but you don't have the control what public IP address will be assigned. That control you don't have. Okay. So that's why I've written here. It is into the AWS control. AWS decide whether I want to give you x.x.x or either want to give you y.y.y, means any IP address I can give you from my pool. Okay. Assigned dynamically by AWS when launching the instance in the public subnet. Okay. So you should have a public subnet, then only you will get the public IP address. Okay. By the way, I just want to ask one question. What is the public subnet? If you guys got it, anybody can let me know. What is the public subnet? Anybody, right or wrong, it may be anything, that's fine for me. I will correct it, but still, I need a response. What is the public subnet?
Subnet which is available in public.
Available in public. So I can, if tomorrow, if I'm asking that, okay, then what is the private subnet?
Within the network is called private.
Within the network, it's called private. Okay. So I think Aditya was there, right? Aditya, you said the subnet which is available public.
Yes.
So definition was correct, but still the meaning you know or don't know, that I did not understood. So in the simple words, if my server is able to take my traffic outside the internet or over to the internet, and any traffic it can take up inside my server from the internet, that particular subnet where I place that server is called as public subnet. Okay. And how it is possible? How I configure the public subnet? Can you let me know?
We need to assign internet gateway with the
We
subnet.
need to assign the internet gateway to that public to the subnet. Okay. So simply the subnet which has the internet gateway in that route table. Okay. That particular subnet is called as public subnet, because why internet gateway? Internet gateway is a device which basically takes up our traffic to the internet. Okay. And in the private subnet, okay, in the private subnet is the one where we don't assign internet gateway in the route table. Okay. So that is the difference. Now, assigned dynamically by AWS when launching instance in the public subnet. Okay. So whatever the subnet where the internet gateway is assigned, that's where you can get the public IP address. Okay. Used to allow direct access to the instance from the internet. AWS control changes when the instance is stopped or started, it gets changes. Okay. It does not change when the server is started. Guys, there's a one difference. So what I want to say here is that, let's say tomorrow, this is my server, okay, server A. Let's forget about the server B. I'm just focusing on server A. Right now, server A has, if you see because my server A is created in where? Public subnet, right? And that's why we allowed this particular subnet public IP address. Okay. So this is my IP address 184.72.135.94. Okay. If I reboot this server, okay, so go to instant state and reboot this server. So you see here, if I reboot this server, this particular IP address will not change. We have already talked about private IP address, so I'm not going to discuss this right now. You already know that private IP address will always be the same until unless this server dies up, until unless this server is deleted. Obviously, when server is deleted, this will be released from here, okay? But entire life of this server, till the time this server is available, whether it's stopped, started, or anything, private IP address will be same. Okay, that's all we have already discussed. Now we are talking about public IP address. In case of public IP address, if you restart the server, if you go to instant state, reboot the server, your public IP address will not change. But in interview, they may trick you in the interview questions. What they say is that when the public IP address get changed, so they may trick you. If you restart the server, public IP address may change, okay? But there's a difference in reboot and stopping and starting the server. If I say reboot and if I stop and start the server, this is also restart, right? Reboot is also restart. If I stop this server and then start it, this is also restart, right? But there's a small difference. If you reboot the server, the public IP address remains same, but if you stop the server, now I am stopping this server, server A, just focus on server A, okay? Server A is going into the stop state, just wait for a few seconds. Server A is going to the stop state. Right now the server A IP address is 94. Just focus on last digit 94. Last one is an R 94 or anything you can focus on, or maybe you can write this up anywhere where you want to just see this one. So if I want to write it here, I can write here just to see whether what next is coming. So this is my public IP address right now over to the server A. Okay. Now my server is in the stop state. It is still stopping. Just wait for a few seconds. I think my console is not behaving well, but wait for a few seconds. It's still stopping. Just few seconds. So now server A goes into the stop state. If you see here in the server A, sorry, in the server A, and if you see the details, whatever the server you select, the details will come to that particular server only. Okay, remember this one. Now, if you see here in the server A details, public IP address is released, means it has released that public IP address which was assigned when you stopped it. So now let me start it. So when I start this server, what do you think? will be the same IP address assigned or different one? Any idea?
I think it will be different.
Yeah, so it's running now. It has a different IP address. Now, why does this happens? Now, if you see here, earlier this was the public IP address. Now this is the public IP address on the server A. And when it got changed, when we stopped and started, stop and start is also reboot. But in AWS, it is not equivalent to the reboot. Okay, because if you reboot the server still runs into the running state. It doesn't release the resources. Just the OS is restarted. But hardware resources like your NIC cards, your file systems, or maybe the other resources are not released. That's why, because public IP address or the private IP address are assigned to the NIC card. That's what I already showed you here in the diagram. Okay, I showed you this one. When the IP address is assigned on the NIC card, but when you reboot the server, this NIC card is not released. Okay, this is still associated. This is still attached. That's why the IP addresses are still the same. But when you shut down the server, this NIC card is released. This is detached. And when this is detached, the private public IP address is released at that time. And when you start it again, anything can come up. Now, why does this happen? Why AWS does like this? Okay. Because AWS says that, hey, I have a specific pool of public IP address because public IP address are the paid one, means it's not free. Public IP address are unique and the paid one. So for AWS has to pay to the ISPs or the domain providers the money for this public IP addresses. And that's why it has a specific pool. AWS has a specific pool of public IP address. So AWS says that whenever somebody will launch the instance, I can assign a particular IP address to that to the server. Okay, but when AWS sees that any particular server is in the stopped state, they are not using the, so that's at that time that public IP address is detached and again went back into that pool, such that AWS save the cost for that public IP address. Okay. Now when you start that server, now suppose this was the IP address. Okay. Now understand this by diagram. Okay. So this is the AWS pool. Let's say this is the AWS pool where lots of public IP address AWS has. Okay. So there are lots of public IP address. Now let's say tomorrow you created the server. So this particular IP address is been assigned. What is that? Let's write it here. So let's say this was the one which was assigned for 184.72.134.94.134.94. Okay, I'm not bothering it, maybe anything. And let's say this is your server. Okay. Now, when you created the server, let's say this particular IP address was free in the pool at that time and all other were assigned to some other instance. Okay. Now this is free at that time. So what AWS did is you require the public IP, it assigned to you this IP address. Okay. Now when you stop the server, okay, this IP address is released and went back to this pool. And when you started it again, so this meanwhile, when you stop this server, this was released and went back. Now some other user, some other customer requires the public IP address. So what would have happened is that this IP address was assigned the meanwhile to other server. Now this is not free. This has already been used by another server. Okay, by another customer. Meanwhile, your server went into the stopped state. Okay. Now when you started this server again, so now this is not free. This has been already using by another customer. Now let's say this one is free. So this one will get assigned to your server. Now you got it why this happens. Okay. So this is the whole reason of happening of this one. So now interviewer, if some interview you are attending an interview and let's say this says that did the public IP address change during the reboot? So you can answer no. During the reboot it doesn't change, but when you shut down the server, the public IP address will get changed. Okay. So that's what I have written here. This is a very small point, but you need to understand. It doesn't change when server is restarted. It can only change when you stop and start the server. Okay, you can only decide whether to take public IP address or not when launching the instance. So now you can decide. So let's say if I'm launching instance, okay, any another instance, I already showed you there's the option enable or disable. Even in your public subnet, if you have a public subnet, that doesn't mean that you always need a public IP address. That is your choice. Let's say I'm getting server B tomorrow, and now this is your choice whether you need public IP address or not. Let's say I want to create into this VPC B, that's fine for me. This is my public subnet. Now by default, my public subnet will give me the public IP address, but I need it or not, that is my choice. So now let's say I don't want public IP address in my server. Okay, so I want to disable it. Okay, I don't want public IP address. If I disable this here, then if I launch the instance, it will not give me the public IP address. Now I have one question for you. Let's say tomorrow I need the public IP address on this server. So will I get this or not? Now this server B is created. Okay, this is my server B. And if you see the detail, I did not have the public IP address. So this server B is terminated. Why? Let me just give me a moment. Okay, this is not the server B. This is the server B. The name can be same, that's fine. Okay. So if you see here, I just got the private IP, but I did not get the public IP because I disabled at that time that I don't want public IP address on this server instead of having public subnet. So that is your choice. That's what I have written here, that you can decide whether to take the public IP or not on the launch time of the instance. When you're launching, that time only you can decide. But when you have launched the instance, then you don't have any choice to get the public IP address. There's another type of IP address that we can get onto this instance, okay, which is the elastic IP address that I'll talk after this one, okay. But the public IP address, now you don't have any choice to get on this one. If you need public IP address, you need to remove this server, create another server where you can have the public IP address. So you can only decide at the launch time itself whether you want it or not. If you have not decided, if you have declined, then you will not get the public IP address on this server. Furthermore on it, okay. That's what I've written here. If you did not take the public IP at instant launching, you can take the elastic IP that I will discuss later. If still I want to have a public IP address, then how would I deal that particular scenario that I'll talk about. By default, AWS allow 5 elastic IP addresses per AWS region, means you can have only 5 IP address, 5 elastic IP address in AWS region. So when I talk about elastic IP, I'll come to that one after this one only. Cannot be manually assigned or reassigned. Public IP address is not in your control, so you cannot assign to some another server that is not in your choice, okay, because it has been assigned by the pool. So it is into the AWS control. That's what I've written here. Cannot be manually assigned or reassigned. Example use case, web server needing the internet access. So any web server, or if you want to log in the server, you can use public IP address. Okay, for that purpose, we can use the public IP address. If I would have to take the example, then you can again go back to server A, configure the, okay, this is shut down, that's fine for me. So server A, I can go to the connect, I can connect to this instance. Server A has a public IP address, right? So I can SSH this server, or I can run any website or anything which I needs to, for which I needs the internet for that in that server. So let's say I want to use this command yum install httpd -y. So I want to install httpd service, which is nothing but the Apache service. Okay, that's where I can create the website. So I have to go to the where www.html. I can create one file here, index.html. So these are the Linux command, at least you should be aware about. Okay, this is my website, and this server is on. this server is on public subnet. So I'm writing these things into a file, means in my website, and this servers to access this website, use public IP address. So these are some information that I've written this particular, sorry, can't write. Okay, I know why it's not writing, because it needs sudo access. So I can use sudo access index.html. So this is public server, use public IP to access this website. Okay, so I have written something like that. Okay, now this is saved. You can start now systemctl. You can use sudo command to start because it needs the root access. Systemctl start httpd. So it is started successfully. Go to here, server A, use public IP and see whether this website is available or not. So it will not work. Any reason anybody can recall why it's not working? Hmm? Okay, tell me one thing. What's the port number of HTTP? Do you know about the port number of HTTP?
81. 80.
80. Okay. So just tell me one thing. If I want to, what's the port number of SSH? You know?
22.
22. Okay. SSH means I want to log in the server. So when I want to log in this server using SSH using putty, that means, so if I open the putty and if I put my IP address here, which automatically says that you are going to connect over the port number 22. Okay. I will talk about what's the port number, why they are needed. That's another part that I'll discuss. So port number is nothing but where the virtual connections are being made over any service. So SSH is a service which helps to connect the server and which runs over a port number 22 in the server. And then when I go to the authentication, define my keys, because when the server will be connected, it would have some via authentication ways. So I can decide my keys, which I've already decided, and I want to open. But if you see here, my connection is opening, means somewhere the traffic is allowed for this particular port number 22, right? That's why I'm able to get the connection. Okay. Now, in the similar way, if anything, in the similar way, another service in my server is running, which is nothing but HTTP, which is nothing but Apache, which runs over port number 80. Okay. So somewhere I have to define the port number 80. I have to allow the port number 80 as well for this service. So now how this will be allowed? If you go to security, you have to go to the security group of this server. So security group of this server is this one. Okay. And then if you see here, in this security group port number 22 is already allowed. You see, added inbound rules, just added inbound rules. So if you see here, port number 22 is already allowed, which is nothing for SSH. Tomorrow you can allow for, because you want to access the website which runs over port number 80 in this server. So you have to allow the traffic as well. Okay. So although we will come to this part later as well. So I will go to instance again, modify security group. Yeah. So what I'll do is, what I'll say that, hey, allow HTTP traffic as well. So HTTP, which runs over port number 80, where, from where, who can access your website? I says that over to the internet, everybody. This means everybody, any IP address or any client machine. This is my client machine, right? What is my client IP address? My IP address. So my public IP address, if I want to see my public IP address of my server, of my computer, So this is my public IP address. If I only allow this one, then I can only access this website. Okay. But if I want to allow everybody in this world, in this entire world, like Facebook, like Google, everybody is accessing, right? So anybody in this world can access my website. So save rules. Now if you hit it again, now see here, your website is working fine. Okay, you are able to access your website, which is running on your server. Okay, that's where I have configured by HTTPD service. So although you would have got an idea that what is HTTPD and how it's working. So now that's what I say here. Example use case is web server. So which IP address I use to access this website? Public IP address. If I use private IP address, will it work? Anybody?
No, sir.
It will not work because private IP address is for internal communication. If I want to go from server A to server B, or if I want to ping or do any connection between AWS server, then it's fine. But if I want to use over the internet, because this IP address will go over to the internet, right? Over to the internet. So over to the internet, the communications are made over to the internet. You got it? All good? All right. Now, what is Elastic IP? The third part is Elastic IP. Elastic IP is nothing but a kind of a public IP. Okay, this is also public IP, but it has a elasticity. I already told you in the first class, if any service has elasticity, that means it can be reassigned to another resource. So elastic IP is a persistent, okay? Persistent means it will not change. The static public IP, if you want for your instance, let's say tomorrow you given this public IP address to your client, says that, hey, I have configured a website on this public IP address, and you can always access this public IP address. Or what happens is that in the real world scenario, I'm just taking example. In the real world scenario, what you exactly do is you would basically take a CNAME. You will basically have the record. You can buy this record or the um, what you say is that domain from GoDaddy or anything. Okay, let's say tomorrow you buy a record www.abc.com. Okay, but nobody knows the name of this particular no, if you give this particular IP address to your clients that I have installed or configured my website over to this IP address, so how much time they will remember your this public IP address? Maybe for a few seconds, right? After that they will forget. So you will have to buy the domain and route this particular domain. That's what Google and everybody does it. Okay, behind the scene every website runs on a public IP address. Okay, so now this particular IP address is being used for this particular website. Let's assume right now. Okay, now suppose you have rebooted by any reason. Let's say tomorrow you are doing some activity or anything happened to your server, you rebooted your server, you shut down and started. Then what will happen? This IP address is going to be changed. Yes or no? Let's say tomorrow I have rebooted this server, which is server A, right? Where I have configured this one. Server A. Let's close this one. This is my server A. Okay. Let me reboot this server. So when I reboot this server, this public IP address will change, right? Which is right now this one. So this particular website will not work at that time, right? After that, so again, what you have to do is the whatever the next IP address you will get in your DNS server, you have to make an entry that now this website will be routed to this IP address. Yes or no? Everybody's agreeing on my point or not?
Yes.
Right? So at that time, you will now, whenever you will reboot the server, you will have to change the route or you have to change the entry in your DNS. So to save this particular efforts, you need a persistent IP, a persistent public IP, which doesn't change. Persistent public IP. Persistent means which is persistent across the reboots. Whether you start, stop, shut down, whatever you do, that doesn't change. that particular public IP, and that the nature of that IP is public, that is not a private IP, okay, is called as EIP, means elastic IP. Okay, that's what we are going to learn right now. So why it is needed, I already told you. Wherever you need a persistent elastic IP, a persistent public IP, you need to have a elastic IP. It is in AWS control itself, means you never know which public IP will be assigned, but whatever will be assigned, that will be persistent. Okay, so that's why written here, it is in AWS control. What will be given, we never know, but will be the persistent. Can be manually assigned and reassigned to the different instance. Public IP, in that case, we cannot reassign to any other instance, but elastic IP can be reassigned to any another instance. Okay, doesn't change when the instance is stopped or restarted. AWS charges for elastic IP if it is not associated with the running instance. I will let you know. Example use case, hosting a website or application requiring a consistent public IP, that I already showed you why it is needed. Elastic IP means it can be detached or reassigned. There's elasticity in that IP. Okay. Now, lab 1, we will do the labs for it. Launch an instance and use the public IP to run a custom website, that I already showed you. Okay, I have already launched the instance. I have run the custom website. Restart the EC2 server and see public IP behavior. Already we have seen that when we restart or shut down the server. I'm referring restart here means shutting down and starting. Okay, so when we restart the server, basically public IP get changed. That also we have already seen. Disable auto send public IP withdraw from the subnet. That also we have done. If you want to disable that, public IP should not be assigned automatically from your subnet. So go to subnet settings and disable that option such that your public IP will not be automatically assigned. Okay. Take the elastic IP and use it. So now, suppose, let me do one thing. Let me do a cleanup. Just give me a moment. Let me do a cleanup. So now, uh, go to the instances tab. Okay, that's fine. If you're not able to describe, that's fine for me. Just refresh here and see how many instances are running. So these 3 instances are running. I don't want these 3 instances. I am just using server B. So I don't want this public server, or let it be public server, let it be, because why I need that I'll let you know. So now very first question is that the public server, there's no public IP assigned, right? So what I told you, that when you decide that you want to have a public IP or not, you can decide at the launch time itself. So at the launch time, I have denied to take the public IP address. Now I don't have any chance to take the public IP address, but I can have the public public IP address via means of elastic IP on this server. So now what I can do is, if you go to the left pane of this particular console, you will see here the elastic IP. Just give me a moment. Somewhere you will see, yeah, this is the elastic IP. Just open this one into the another tab. Okay. Just close the other one. That's fine. I don't need it. Will create the confusions. And that's fine. I don't want now this server B. Okay. So use this elastic IP. Now I have opened the elastic IP. So I just have one IP address. Okay. I can allocate any number of IP address in my account. Okay. In my region. So I can allocate, I want to say that, hey, assign me elastic IP. Elastic IP is nothing but the public IP, but it is a persistent IP. And which particular region you are, I am into the US East one, so it will be allocated in this region, allocate. Now AWS says that, hey, when I gives you the public IP, when I gives you the elastic IP, you need to assign this particular IP address to any resource. So first one is already been assigned to somewhere. Okay. Now second one, which you have recently assigned, so I can give it a name, that my EIP, something like that. Okay, so that we can differentiate that this is our elastic IP which we have taken from the AWS. So AWS says that, hey, you have taken this IP address, but if you go to the summary, if you see where it has been used, so none of the where it has been used. Okay, so if you see here, it has not been used any associate instance ID. So it is not associated to nobody. No resources associated to this particular public IP, which is elastic IP. Now, If I go to my server where I don't have the public IP, what I can do is I can attach that elastic IP here. So I can do here, go to the networking, attach, just give me a moment, what's that option I have to see? Again, go to here. Or what you can do is you can take this particular instance ID, okay? You can take the instance ID from here or either from here, that's your choice. So this is my instance ID, okay? I can take it from here. I can go to the elastic IP where I have assigned that elastic IP to me. Choose this elastic IP, go to the action, and then associate elastic IP to which resource you want to associate. I want to associate this elastic IP to the instance. Either you can define the instance ID or network interface. I told you earlier, uh, whenever the IP is assigned over to the interface. So any choice, whether you go and define the network interface ID or either define the instance ID, your choice. So I want to say that, hey, I want to assign this particular server, which is a public server, okay? And private IP address, that's fine. Why private IP address is needed to define here? Because there are two interfaces. So we want to assign this interface or this interface. That's fine. That's what you want to assign. Reassociation is specify whether elastic IP can be reassigned to different resource if already associated with the resource. Yeah, I can allow. So later on, if somebody can release this IP address and assign to somebody else, that's fine for me. Elastic IP, there are multiple interfaces attached to the instance. Just give me a moment. That's multiple interface. Okay, if there's multiple interface, then you can choose the interface, which interface you want to assign. I can assign to the second interface, that's fine. Associate. If there are multiple interface to a server, you have to define the ENI in that case, okay? Means network interface in that case to associate the elastic IP. Now, if you come here and refresh this one, you will see one public IP has been coming to this public server. So if I choose this server, just give me a moment, it's just refreshing. So now see here, you will get elastic IP. Just give me a moment, it will take some time. This was the server, right? Public server. Select the instance. Details. You see here, now I got the elastic IP over to my server, right? So this IP will act as an elastic IP for this server. So if I'm running a website or anything, whatever you want to run, you can have using this public IP. Okay. So if you want to remove it, you can remove it. So this will act as a public IP for this server. Now, if you want to use the public IP, you can use this. And whether you want to reboot this server, this public IP remains intact. Means it will be as it is, whatever you have taken, whatever has been assigned by AWS. So it will not change. So I'm stopping this server. Okay. And if I start this server after stopping, so even if you see, you can see here, server isn't going to the stopping state, but this is not getting released. It is still available. It takes some time to get into the stop state. Instant state is stopped now. Okay. But you see here, elastic IP still is attached, means this will always be available. And remember one more thing, you have not taken public IP at the launch time, so you will not get any time, but this elastic IP will behave as a public IP for this server. So now if you deassociate this elastic IP, again, you will not have a public IP on your server, okay? Now I have a question for you. Suppose this is the server A, okay? and this server has a public IP. And now this server doesn't have the elastic IP. If I remove this public IP from the public server, okay, now let's remove this public IP. Now let's remove this elastic IP. So I want to go here. I want to say that, hey, I don't need this elastic IP. Okay, so deassociate elastic IP address from the server. Okay, so now it is going to detach that elastic IP from the public server. So if you refresh it, okay, so this public server now no longer have the elastic IP. It will take some time. Let's refresh it. So it will go from here. So if you see here, if I want to see the details, so you see here that elastic IP is now gone from this server. But what I want is to the server A, which already has a public IP, I want to attach this server A with the elastic IP. So I'm again choosing this elastic IP. I say that, hey, associate this elastic IP address and associate to the server A. Okay, so now I am choosing server A. So you can choose public IP, private IP address here, associate. Now this IP address is associated to the server A. Now what will happen to the public IP address of server A? Will it remain the same or change or anything? Any inputs from your side?
Not change.
It will not change. Any other else who are taking this session seriously? Anybody, your just inputs, what you're thinking. Because Elastic IP, why I'm asking? Because Elastic IP is also a public IP, right? But the nature of that public IP is it doesn't change by system reboots. Okay, that's the only difference. Now, when I have assigned the public IP as well, and when I assign the Elastic IP as well to this server, what will be the consequences to the public IP address? Will it change, or what will happen, or will it be removed from here? Any inputs from your side?
Sir, I think it will got change.
It will not change.
Got change, sir, change.
It is going to be changed. Okay. Then what will be the next IP address, next public IP address if it is going to change? Any idea? Or it will be randomly assigned by AWS?
Maybe, or maybe it can elastic IP.
Okay. So yeah, he said right, because now you're using two public IP on your server. Okay. So what AWS will do, AWS says that, hey, you already have a public IP address, and now you are asking me to assign elastic IP address, which is again a public IP address. Okay, so I can't give you two public IP address. I will only give you. So in that case, when you assign the elastic IP address where server already have a public IP address, so your elastic IP becomes your public IP address. So if I refresh this particular server, you see here the server A has been assigned with elastic IP address. Okay, just wait a moment. Why it's taking that much time? Just wait a moment. So you see here, it has been assigned with the elastic IP address, and the address of that elastic IP is 54.157.57.122. And now again that address has been changed. That public IP address has been removed. Now your elastic IP has become your public IP address. So that means again you are having only one public IP address. Okay. Now if I reboot this server, will this IP address change? Another question. Anybody? If I take a shutdown and start, will this change?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Why it will change? Now this is the elastic IP. So when you
No, sir.
reboot the
No,
server, does
sir.
elastic IP change?
No, sir. If it elastic IP, it will not going to change
So
actually.
that's what I'm saying. Now your public IP is equivalent to your elastic IP. Means this IP is only your public IP. Means you have only one public IP. If you reboot the server, this will not change. Okay. Now, now I can access anything, whatever I want to do. Okay, this is fine. I can take this as a session and I can do whatever I want to do with this server, whatever the means by public IP has to be done. So I can use it for any purpose. So you see here, my connection is going to be established with my server over the internet. So that means my elastic IP is working. And if I stop this server, then my public IP is not going to be changed. Okay, let's do this as well and see. Because your public IP is now of elastic nature. Okay, so your elastic IP is now public IP. Ultimately, you will have to get one public IP address on your server. Now, that is your choice whether you want to have that public IP address of elastic nature or non-elastic nature. Okay, means persistent or not persistent. So if my server A has been into this top state. So if you see here, my server is in this top state. If I refresh it, it's still, just a moment, let it come. So if you see here, still my public IP is associated, means it doesn't, because in the earlier case, when we stopped the server, when we did not have the elastic IP, only public IP. So at that time, the public IP was released into the pool again, right? It went down, it went back into the pool, but now it is still associated. So if I start it, it's going to be the same. It's not going to change right now. So we start the server A. Again, I'm up with the same IP address. I don't need to change it. So somebody running with the website or anything, so it's fine for you. Never had to do the routings again and again. Okay. So that's all about the elastic IP. Reassign the elastic IP to another instance. That's what we did. We earlier assigned to public server. We deassociated with the public server. We assigned to the server A this particular IP address, which is here. Now, what AWS says that? AWS says that, hey, if you have taken the elastic IP from me and you are not using, so if you see here, we are using this elastic IP to the server A, right? So AWS will not take any charge from you. So AWS says that hey, you are using this elastic IP to this particular instance, which is nothing but a server A. Okay. So I will not take any charge because public IPs are chargeable. But AWS says that if you, if I'm removing, okay, one more question. Now, before that, one more question. Suppose if I deassociate this elastic IP from the instance. So if I deassociate elastic IP address from that instance, okay. Now what will be the consequences of public IP address? Will it remain same or public IP will be removed or will it be a different public IP address? Any
Uh,
option from all those three.
Different,
it will be different, I think.
different.
It will be different IP. Any other thoughts? Anybody else? How many people agree that it will be removed? Nobody? Or how many people says that it will be not the same, it will be same? Okay. So if you have allocated the elastic IP to your server, so at that time your elastic IP becomes the public IP, means whatever the public IP was there, it will get removed and your elastic IP is equivalent to your public IP. But when you deassociate elastic IP again, I have deassociated that. So elastic IP will be removed. Okay, this is going to be removed. When I refresh this one, this is going to be removed. But this one, this is IP is nothing but this IP only. So this is also going to be removed, right? So now what AWS will do, because you have chosen at the launch time, you chosen that you need a public IP on this server, right? So what AWS will do, any IP which is free in the pool will associate to this server. Okay. So when I refresh this one, this 122 is going to be released from here. Something else will come here. So if I go to the server A again, okay. Now if you see here, if I am choosing the server A, only server A, if you see here, that elastic IP is not there and the public IP address got changed. Okay. So remember this thing. Now the nature of this public IP is again dynamic. If you again reboot this one, this is going to be changed now. This will not be static, okay? Because this is not elastic IP. I think now you got all the inputs about the elastic IP. So I have written here as well. If I already have a public IP over an instance and you take the elastic IP over to that, but later you remove the elastic IP from the instance, what happened to the public IP? Will it change? Yes, that will get changed. Okay, so you got the answer. Now, what I was saying that elastic IP, when I release the elastic IP, this is my elastic IP, I deassociate it with my resource. Okay, so now no resources using that particular elastic IP. So if you go to the details, so nobody is going to use this one. Nobody is using that one. Okay. So AWS says that, hey, if your elastic IP is sitting free, means you taken from the pool. I given you from the pool. Allocate means it is giving you from the pool of public IP address, one IP address, a persistent IP address, it is giving to you. But you are using or not, that is your choice. So AWS says that if you are not using, means it's not associated to any device. So better to release this elastic IP. Otherwise, I will take a charge from you. So AWS says that elastic IP is free. It is totally free. But when you are using it to any resource, you are associating with the any resource. When you are not associating with any resource, I will take a charge for you for this public IP for this elastic IP. So at that time when you are not using, just better to release this elastic IP so that this elastic IP will go to the uh, pool again. Okay. So now that particular elastic IP is released now into the pool. So we don't have, if you need furthermore anytime, you can again allocate elastic IP from here. Okay. To your region. Now this is what all about the elastic IP. So now we have completed private IP, public IP, and elastic IP. If anybody has any doubts here, just let me know. Then we will move ahead. All good to understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do one thing. Let's take a break of 10 minutes. Okay, we will be back. Okay, so anybody who wants to take the tea or who wants to have the coffee, just take it. I'll be back within a 10 minutes. I'm just putting a timer here so that you will also be available. Timer, just set it for 10 minutes. Why it's not changing? Stopwatch. Please off recording. Yeah, that I'll do. No worries. Okay, so timer. Why timer is not running? This is a 10 minutes, right? 10 seconds only. Okay. Minute, hour, seconds. It's a hour, it's minute. So I think again it's wrong here.
+5,
+5. Okay, so now this is 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Okay. Okay, now it's fine. Yeah. So I'm just coming in 10 minutes. Okay. So you can take your break, whatever you want. So I'm just stopping my recording here. Just give me a moment. How do I record? How do I pause it? Resume record. All right. So now the next part that we have is security group and NACL. Okay. So security group and NACL. So now in the VPC, we need to understand, actually this is a part of EC2 as well. Some topics are there which are common to EC2 service and VPC. So we are itself completing in VPC itself. Okay. And tomorrow there's a need of an EC2, then I will not explain again. So now in the VPC, basically there are two types of firewalls. One of them is security group and another one is the network ACL. Okay. So when we are basically talking about the firewalls, we need to understand the ports as well. Okay. So what's the port? Now, when you access any website, okay, or when you access any server, let's say this is a server. Let's do it here in the great way. Let me talk here. Okay. So let's say this is your server. And this particular server is having an IP address. Okay. So let's say this is your server. And in this server, let's say there are multiple services running. Let's say one of the services SSH, another service is HTTP, which is Apache. Third service is, let's say, DNS service. So there are multiple other services, etc. I'm writing. Okay. Now you tell me one thing. If you want to use this service in the server, if I just give you the IP address, will that be sufficient? Let's say that IP address is x.x.x. Okay, let's take example. Now, if I want to do SSH using this IP address of the server, okay, if I want to do the SSH, then let's say this is my user which wants to do SSH to this server. Let's say this is my user which is here. And over to the internet, it's requesting for SSH. And I'm just giving the IP address. So will it be sufficient? No, right? So you need to have the port number as well. Okay, so by default, SSH runs over to which port? 22. Okay, but what I'm saying that only IP address in the server will not be sufficient for running the services because services are the different. Okay, let's say if tomorrow I don't have port compatibility, means I don't have a feature kind of a port, right? So in that case, how anybody will differentiate the services within the server? Because server may have n number of services running inside that. Okay. So if and we can access the server using the public IP address. Now, if I want to use HTTP service, then I need to use port number 80. How? In that case as well, when you are using this one, you are defining the port number. Okay. So when you're defining the port number, it comes here as a colon. Okay. Or anything. Let's say tomorrow you are using google.com. You don't explicitly defined here, but in tons you defined. Okay. So if I use Google colon 80, that means Google is also running on a web server, right? If I'm putting 80, it's running. Okay. So if you see here, if I define 80, the Google will start here. Okay. So that means every server in the world, every service in the world is running on a port. Okay. And that's where we differentiate in the services. Otherwise, if you have only IP address, you will not be differentiate the services. Okay. So that's the whole purpose of defining the port number. So that's what I've written here. Purpose of the port number is a single IP address will not be sufficient for all the application or services running on the server. Just give me a moment. Sorry for that. Okay. So I was saying that a single IP address is not sufficient for defining the multiple services in the server. Okay, that's where we need the port number. So another advantage of port numbers: communication channels, separation of services, security, okay, and service identification. Because as you know that HTTP runs over 80, SSH runs over 22. That's how we differentiate. Okay. Now, a port number is a port is a port number. This is all the definition. You can refer it. I am not going to read it. Okay, that's fine. But what I want to say is the port ranges in Linux or any system range from 0 to 65535. Means if you want to define a port number for any service or anything, it can be into this service. This basically ranges further divided. So for well-known services like HTTP, SSH, FTP, DNS, all these services are using the port from 0 to 1023. Okay, this range is defined for them. And for registered port, usually the application that are not globally standard but still registered. Means what I want to say that somewhere if somebody has worked on container or somebody knows about the containers, we do the port forwarding. Somebody knows about port forwarding? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is. We can do it in Linux also.
We can do it Linux also, that's fine. But the whole sole purpose of the port forwarding is, let's say suppose your service is running on 80, but you want to route that traffic within the server into port number 8080. So which ports you will use? So you will use the ports from 10242 to 49151. Okay, this is recommended. So these ports are used for port forwarding. Now, after this range, in this range, the left part is from 49151. So 4915552 to 65535 are the dynamic port or ephemeral ports. So I will talk about that. What are dynamic or ephemeral? Okay. Now you can use the netstate command in Linux to check which ports are open in your system. So if I have a Linux server, I can do that. If my instance is already there, okay, I've closed that, that's fine. But you can use a netstate command to see that which ports are in the listening state, means which ports are running in your server. Okay. Now, firewalls. In AWS, there are two types of firewalls. One is a security group, another one is network ACL. So first one we'll talk about security group. It is a ENI level resource, means instance level. When you create a server, a network interface is also created that we have already seen, and that's where the public and private IPs are assigned to that interface. So we want to block the traffic, any incoming traffic to your server, then you will use security group, okay? And security group is attached to the server or attached to your ENI, okay? You can create a security group from EC2 or VPC console. So if you go to here, either you can go to the EC2 service or either you can go to the VPC service. From both the services, you can create the security group. So right now I'm going to the VPC service. Let's say tomorrow I am on EC2. So this is my EC2 service. Okay. So in the left hand side, you will see here the security group option is available. You can go to the security group and create the security group from here. It will come here. Just give me a moment. It's coming here. Okay. In VPC as well, you can have the same option. You can go to the security group and create the security group. Okay. Your choice whether which service to choose. So that's one I have mentioned here. You can create a security group while launching the instance or after or before launching the instance. So either you can create a security group. Let's say suppose I want to launch instance. Okay. So when you go to the instance and you launch the instance, okay, and you have seen one option where it says that create security group. Okay. So server A, let's say anything, server D. Okay, I'm calling this server D. Now, if you see here, after defining the keys, if you see here in the network settings, it says that whether you want to use the existing security group which you have already created or you want me to create the another security group. So by default, when you create a server, it the option is create security group. It will create a new security group. Okay, it will give it a random name of it. Okay, and it will only allow SSH traffic from everywhere to this server. So now that is your choice whether you want to pre-create your security group, okay, in advance, and then select that security group from the tab, okay, whatever will be available. So that one you can use, okay. So this is your choice whether you want to pre-create your security group or whether you want to do it while launching only. Okay. It is attached to the instance. All the server can have one security group or different security group for each server. So in your EC2 console or in your AWS, either one server can have multiple security group or you can have one security group for your server. Okay. So that is your choice. I will let you know the scenario in which cases it can happen. Okay. There are two types of rules defined in the security group, inbound and outbound. So inbound, sometimes we technically call them egress as well, ingress, and outbound we technically sometimes call them ingress. Okay. Sorry, egress. So there are two types of traffic basically. So that depends upon which reference to you're talking about. So let's take an example. Let's suppose I just want to ask you a few questions on that. Suppose this is a server, okay? And your user is requesting to take SSH of the server, okay? So as with reference to the server, which is this traffic? This is an inbound traffic or outbound traffic? Inbound or outbound? Anybody has any idea?
Sir, it is inbound traffic, I think.
This is the inbound traffic because this traffic, this request is coming to the server. Server is seeing that request, right? This traffic is coming from user to the server. So if I talk about the server reference, this is the inbound traffic. Okay. And if I talk about the user reference, then let's say now what this traffic is. This
It
is
will
the
be
outbound
outbound.
traffic because user is sending the request, server is receiving the request. So it depends upon who receives and who is sending, right? Let's say tomorrow server responds back. Let's say you did a SSH session. Okay, you are taking SSH, you are firing some commands. Over SSH, what you're doing, you're firing some commands. When you fire, let's say you fire ifconfig -a. So some response will come from the server, right? To your putty. Let's say you're using putty here. So this is your putty, let's say. Okay. And in this putty, you're firing the command ifconfig -a. Ifconfig command. So you're requesting one command. So response will come from the server. Now tell me from the server reference point of view, what is this traffic? Haji, what is this traffic? When server responds back to the user, because you fire one command, right? The output will come to your screen. So that means request has been done, but response is coming from the server. What is the traffic? This traffic,
Outbound?
outbound traffic. Okay. So who is sending? Again, who is sending? Server is sending this traffic to the user. But this traffic, if I talk about user reference, what is that? Inbound, because it is coming to the user. So for user level, it's inbound traffic. For server level, that is the outbound traffic because request is going out from the server. So now you got it. What's the inbound? What is outbound? Any confusion? Just you
No,
need
sir.
to see the reference and just see who is sending, who is receiving. Okay. There are two types of rules defined in the security group. There are two types of rules, inbound rules and outbound rules. We have only allowed rules in security group. Everything is denied by default. So what security group says is security group is attached to the server. Okay, so this is your security group. Okay, and this security group is attached to the server. Okay, now when this security group is attached to the server, so we have only two types of rules. One is inbound rules, and another one is outbound rules. I can differentiate like this. Just give me a moment. In the security group, I can take a line. Okay, here. Now, in the security group, there are two types of rules. outbound, inbound and outbound. Okay. Okay. So in the whether it's an inbound rule or outbound rule, only allowed traffic is denied. Allowed traffic is defined. Means you only have the allow rules. Means you can only decide what is allowed. You cannot decide what is denied. By default, everything is denied. Whatever is allowed, except that everything is denied. Okay. So this is the nature of the security group, and it is attached to the EC2 instance. That's what we used. If you go to the launch server, now it's asking you whether you want to create a new security group or existing one. Let's say for now, I asking server that to create a new security group. Now it says that it's not asking you what is need to be denied. It's asking you, hey, which traffic you want to allow. So it says that by default, I'm allowing you SSH traffic in this security group. If you want to disallow this one, so no traffic will be allowed. You are not choosing anything, whether allow HTTP or anything. So when you launch the instance, okay, what will happen is that you are not able to do the SSH to this server, because when you refer the security group of this server, let's go to this server and you refer the security group, okay, you will see that nothing is there, means nothing is allowed. So by default, if nothing is allowed, then everything is denied. So if you see server D, and when you go to the security of this server D and see the security group, you will see the security group here in the security tab. And when you click on the security group in the open the new tab, so it will come up here. And then if you see the rules here, so in the inbound rules, I said that there are two types of rules, inbound and outbound for the security group. Okay. So if you see here, there's nothing defined, means if nothing is defined, that means no traffic will be allowed to your server. That means even if you request your server the SSH session or anything, be it SSH session or anything, nothing is allowed. That means this will not work. This is not going to be work. Okay. Even though you have everything set up, you have your internet gateway set up, you have everything in place, but in a security group, nothing is allowed, then you will not be able to do the SSH for your server. Okay. So do one thing, go to the instance again, take the IP address of this server and see whether we are able to ping this IP address or not. So how do you check the ping? You can do the ping command from your CMD to this public IP address. So it says that it's not allowed. Ping is not allowed, neither you can do the SSH. So you are not able to do the SSH as well. You see, SSH is also not working. So AWS says that if you want to allow any traffic, just define it into the security group. So in the inbound group, okay, why I will define in the inbound group? Because this traffic is coming to the server, right? So I can go to edit inbound rules. I can say manually here, hey, I want to allow SSH only for my server. So somebody can do SSH to my server. Now where you in the entire world, or I can choose my IP address. There would be option where you can choose my IP address. So let's say now I'm opening this port for entire world, means anybody can access to my server over SSH port. Okay. So now if you see here, when I save this one, I can do the SSH. Now SSH is happening, okay, but still I cannot do the ping. So I cannot do the ping. I am not able to ping the this server, okay, because I am not allowed. So by default SSH is allowed, but everything is denied, okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm again going to the inbound rules and I'm adding the um, ICMP. ICMP means for ping purpose, okay, for ping protocols. So I'm allowing ping protocol from entire world, so anybody can ping my server. So now if you see here, if I use the ping command, it's working. Okay. But still, if I host a website to this server and if I want to use that server, then website will not work because I have not allowed HTTP traffic. So for allowing the HTTP traffic, you have to go to the inbound tool and allow HTTP traffic from the entire world. Okay, and save it. So now everybody will be able to use the website which you have hosted on your server. If you host on your server the website, it will be used. Okay. So this is the whole sole purpose of the security group. So by default, nothing is allowed. You have to define whatever you want to allow. So whatever is allowed, after that, whatever is left, that is denied by default. Okay. Okay, do one thing. What I'm seeing that, okay, few people are leaving the class. That's fine for me. That's not a problem. So we can continue from this tomorrow. Okay. Maybe the time is completed. We can continue from this tomorrow and we will again catch up from security group and network ACL. Okay. And if you feel some doubts are there, you can go to the recording and then ask me tomorrow if any doubts are there. Okay.
सर
हाँ बोलो.
सर हम कौन से प्रोजेक्ट्स बना सकते हैं ये सीखने के बाद जो रेज्यूमे में ऐड कर पाएंगे?
वो लास्ट में देखेंगे. प्रोजेक्ट्स मैंने डाले हुए हैं. ओके.
ओके
That we
सर.
will complete, not to worry. There are
ओके
5
सर.
projects that we are going to complete. Okay.
ओके ओके.
That we already have in our curriculum. Anything else before closing up?
नो.
Okay, all good. Then we will meet
Sir,
again
you're
tomorrow.
not in the WhatsApp group, huh?
Yeah, I'm not in the WhatsApp group. I will ask Sham to add me. Okay,
Okay, okay, fine.
okay, all right. So if nothing is pending, then we can start it tomorrow from the same time. That's fine. Rest